If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined by Anna Lee, who is a referral to me from my friend Mandy McAllister, who we've had on the show. So love Mandy and love to meet some of her friends. Anna, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Anna, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? Kind of, where you come from, how you got started in real estate, what you've been doing lately?
Sure. I guess I'll start with, I'm an immigrant back in 2005. My husband and I came from Uzbekistan, started our life here, pretty much started from nothing. We had $3,000 that we borrowed from my parents and, just came to explore the opportunities that America has to offer. And fast forward, I guess, both climbed corporate ladders. My husband's kind of job was eliminated because of the layoffs, and that was a blessing. We kind of started thinking about, one of us has to be in the business. By then we started realizing that we continued to be in that, vicious cycle. So he decided to start flipping, and it was very successful, his first flip. And then I guess I was offered an opportunity to move to Switzerland from my corporate job. So we spent the last 4 years there, and my husband kind of continuously flipped, and we both invested in long-term rentals. And we're back here in Pennsylvania for about a year now. And we've been investing ever since. This past March, I've retired from my corporate job due to some, personal circumstances with my father and his health issues, and just meant to be for me to retire. And since then, we also acquired an Airbnb, and I launched my, business too. So that's kind of like a quick story about me in a nutshell.
Wow, there's a whole lot in that 5-second overview. So that's a great story. I'm just going to start from the beginning and kind of work my way through it. So you immigrated here from Uzbekistan, you said?
Yep.
And was that 2005, you said?
2005, yep.
And so what were y'all doing prior to moving here? What was life like over there?
Yeah, I just... pretty much was about a year after college working at this telecommunication company, Ericsson. I want to say it was Swedish. And my husband also worked at a telecommunication company. It was in sales, and it's like probably phone over the internet or something like that was popular at the time.
Voice over IP?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Voice over IP?
Yes, something like that, yeah. And we both had
I came up through telecommunications.
Oh, you did too?
Yeah.
Okay. So we both had pretty good jobs for where we were. But I think stability was probably never guaranteed. You never knew, something's going to change. A lot depends on sort of the government structure and the climate in the country, and, any different type of moods of people in the government change.
Political winds. Yeah.
Yeah. Change everything dramatically. So my husband actually won a green card lottery. So it was very accidental. And, when he did, we decided to move. It was like a no-brainer for us. So it was random jobs not related to what we do right now.
And when you moved to Pittsburgh?
No, PA, nearby Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. And what you said once you got here, you started climbing the corporate ladder. What were you in telecom still, or was it?
No, I have a financial background. So I started working at Vanguard first, and then I moved up to a different company that does pretty much not the whole not the manufacturer, the wholesaling of pharmaceuticals. So that job sort of brought me to Switzerland. Sorry, my kids are trying to reach me.
And so while you were, it sounded like y'all started flipping before you went to Switzerland. And then you said you kept flipping while you were in Switzerland. So y'all were flipping from a whole nother country. I'm assuming you were flipping here. So that's
yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Tell me about
when people say, like, is it possible to invest in real estate from a different state? I'd say yes, because it's possible to do it from a different country. We did have a great setup, though, with my dad, who was our project manager. So he was the one that was watching all the contractors here. So we kind of have like the different roles, responsibilities. I would normally, look at the finances. My husband would find the deal. I'll analyze it. And then, we'll come up with the money for the project. My husband would be on the phone, like hiring all the contractors. And then my dad here locally would just kind of manage them, check in on the projects and stuff like that. So it was a great setup.
So where would he find the projects? Where would he find
To be honest, all of the flips that he did while we were there, all but one, came from MLS, which was very surprising. Yeah. So I do have to say that the kind of caveat that half of them were, even though they were on MLS, they were auction houses. Mm-hmm. So there's an auction, hubzoo.com.
Yeah.
That he would just create a bid. And it was a very interesting learning experience because we realized that we had our top point at which we kind of stopped, like where we would not go above a certain point. And then we did that once and we lost. And we're like, oh, well, would have been a great project, but, what can you do? And then 2 days later, the auction emails us and they said, allegedly, the winner did not, it's just basically something fell through, right? And then they're like, if you want, you can still buy it at your last bid price. And we're like, yeah. So we still think that there's probably some sort of like minutia happening behind the scenes. Maybe they're like allowing themselves to bid or whatever, even though you're not supposed to. But since then, we used the same strategy 3 more times and we were able to get the house.
Awesome. And the same thing happened every time where they're like, you lost it.
We didn't win any of the times.
That's crazy. I've bid on Hubzoo, and I lost the bid. And maybe I should have checked my email. Maybe they tried to follow up with me, and I could have gotten it.
Never know. Yeah.
So, what can you kind of run us through what the numbers on these flips look like? Like what price range are y'all looking for? What profit margin do you have built in? How much purchase? How much rehab? How much sale? How long would it take to sell?
Yeah, most of them actually followed very similar strategy. Like there were like few here and there that were different, but most of them were in very bad condition. Purchase price was around 150, give or take, depending on the project. Our rehab would range anywhere between 80 to 100. Mm-hmm. And our sell price was on average about 350. Okay. So I think we made anywhere between 50 to 70 grand, depending on the project. Awesome. And then my husband is also an agent, so he was making money on the purchase and the sale too.
Nice. Yeah. From another country.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, awesome. He didn't even have to show up for any of the closings too. We just had a power of attorney, I want to say. And then I think when you sell, we always have to do something additionally, but we would just go to the American embassy and he never flew for any of the purchases or sales.
So how did you know that it was a good area, that it was a good deal? How did you check your comps? How did you know that like the ARV that you were coming up with was accurate? Did you really know the area like before you moved to Switzerland? Right. Or is this like all online research that you're going on?
I think we knew it somewhat, not like not to the point that we know it now. And I think when you start, it's almost like that naivete that actually plays plays towards your advantage, because sometimes when you know a lot, you kind of like more risk averse. You don't want to do that.
Sure.
So I think it was a little bit of, really desire to do something, right? Because he flipped once before we left, and it was a successful flip. And, he was looking for something, right? Because he's like, I really like that now. So he was looking for something for a long time. And, I think having my dad here, going there physically, checking the area around, right? That, the neighborhood was decent. That created probably a sense of confidence, right? Because even though my dad is boots on the ground, he's also my dad, right? Like, he's there to like vet
everybody else will lie to you. Your dad won't
exactly
lie to you.
like
the realtor wants to sell it. The property manager wants to manage it. The construction worker wants the construction work. Like everybody will lie to you. You got to be careful. It's great to have somebody you trust.
Yeah. And I think, let's say if you wasn't my dad, right? How do you structure this that the interests are all aligned? Well, you can have that partnership going, right? Again, if you don't do anything, your physical labor is not there. Well, share your profits with a partner, right? So that way you know that, that partner will not go into a business entity that is not going to be successful, because they're going to be using their time, right? And that's a time commitment. So, there's a way kind of around it. But back to your question, we somewhat knew about the area. And as far as the ARV MLS, because my husband is an agent, we have access to MLS, and he's not a real estate agent he never worked a day in his life and as an agent. He just got a license to have access to the MLS and save money on his own flips. So, you look at it long enough, you get a handle of what ARV is.
Sure. Absolutely. How are you financing these projects?
So at first we had enough of our own savings to have one, but once, like at some point when we had 3 projects happening at the same time, I would go out and just find all creative ways to fund some things. So I think I'm very big on credit cards, 0% interest rate, whether it's a sign up or just
Dave Ramsey would be so disappointed.
I know. I'm totally not a Dave Ramsey fan completely. I'm like a credit card queen. I have so many points. We always travel for free. So I kind of started in credit cards with the whole kind of airline and mileage game, but that came in handy with the whole kind of flipping. I probably had at any given point of time about $150,000 access to money through credit cards. And again, I don't pay interest on that. Normally, I prefer to not even pay that 3% fee, but you have to sign up for a new credit card with that. But some of the credit cards I never close because they always give me that balance transfer, 0% interest kind of thing. I just have to pay 3% fee. So between the credit cards, our own cash, access to borrowing against my 401k, you can kind of like max it out at 50. Then I use a couple of options like Best Egg. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but sometimes you get like letters in the mail and they're like, we can find you for, up to 50,000, whatever. Yeah, and I used to think that it's some sort of a scam, but when we actually got it, it was,
I think they sent me 50 grand.
Yeah. I mean, they just sent me 50K and I was like, really? So I applied and, I think the rate was decent. It was like 6%, way better than any hard money. Plus, if I churn it pretty fast, like within 3 months, I only pay for 3 months, right? So it wasn't even like the full 6% that I was paying. So yeah, so it's kind of a combination of creative financing.
Yeah, I got one of those the other day. We got them a bunch of times. My assistant kept always telling me to throw them out, and I was like, fine, just fill it out and see what happens. And like 24 hours later, the money was deposited into my account. I was like, that was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I save all the letters just in case I ever need them, right? And, whenever I do, I just use the code that they sent. One of them actually sent me a letter that I can get like 50,000 points for some airline company too. So I was like, that's double whammy. I normally get that from credit cards.
So when did you start? Like, when did you get back from Switzerland?
August of 2021. So basically like a year ago.
A year ago. So, and I'm assuming y'all have continued flipping. Y'all are still doing that.
Yep.
So, what have you noticed anything different about flipping in what month are we in? September of 2022 versus September of 2021? What have you been seeing in the market?
The last flip my husband sold was in April or May of this year. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's a combination of I wouldn't let him buy things and there were not great deals, right? So he's really eager to buy something where he would make, I don't know, like 30 grand, let's say. And I would strongly advise him against it because I was like, well, you know, you always make above 50. This is not the time to discount something just to get a deal and get it going, only because we're in a downsized market, right? And what we used to be able to sell before, you can't really count for that now.
I mean, I'm taking 30 grand off of each house from what I was selling, you know, the beginning of the year. So
right.
And I mean, a lot of these I bought with so much margin, but like I expected to make 70 and now I'm making 40. But like if I was taking stuff on that I was expecting to make 30, like I wouldn't be making anything.
Exactly.
It's kind of crazy out there right now.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. So, you know, you could go after just smaller margins just because the acquisition price is smaller, right? And go into like Philadelphia specifically. We really don't like to go out there. You know, a lot of our good contractors don't even want to go there. So we're in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and that's where our primary spot is. So recently, you know, we're trying to find ways, how do we creatively find deals? And, you know, I've been actually, since I came back to the United States, I started a wholesaling company, and not for the sake of necessarily having a successful wholesaling company, but more for the sake of getting leads for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I started with myself and my business partner. And what we started realizing specifically in our market in Philadelphia, it's oversaturated. Even before the interest rates started going up, it oversaturated with a lot of investors from New York. Mm-hmm. And New York money is so much different from Philadelphia money. It's almost like, you know, the comparison I would do California money, right? It's like people from California and scoop up everything anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yes, they can pay so much more. So what we noticed is that in Philly, it pretty much became just the rental market. So if you wanted to buy a flip or build something, you have to pretty much know someone, right? Like you have to have like a wholesaling company with a marketing budget of, you know, maybe $50K a month, right? Mm-hmm. So we wholesale few deals, found several deals for ourselves for rentals outside of Philly, but honestly, nothing like too crazy. But what came out of that is relationship that we built with some of the, you know, very interesting investors and people. And the last one was a lady that I was helping out to sell her property off in Philadelphia. She was kind of overpriced and, you know, asking too much, but she had a property in New Jersey, and we were able to get our Airbnb that way. So it's a duplex right on the shore, and it was move-in ready. So we bought it in June and we launched it in July, and it's been a very, you know, amazing and fun experience to run this Airbnb. And on top of that, because of the wholesaling, I had to have a bunch of virtual assistants kind of calling for me, right? Because I actually started it when I was still in Switzerland, different time zone. I don't have time. I'm working for a corporate job, so I really didn't have time to call anyone. So I learned how to hire virtual assistants. And then when I retired earlier this year, I just created a company basically that provide virtual assistant services. So I either sell a course or I hire virtual assistants for other business owners. And what was helpful is when we were launching our Airbnb, we started looking at prices for property managers. And, you know, I don't know if you have Airbnbs, but the property managers for Airbnbs charge about 30%, 30% on average. And we're like, there's no way we're going to pay that much. Our our Airbnb is supposed to gross about $130,000 a year. There's no way you're going to pay them this much money for doing what? And basically they're going to like call us for a lot of the problems anyway, right? Like, would you like to replace the AC or would you like to do that? And I still have to deal with that. So we ended up hiring a virtual assistant, and, it's so affordable, and he's handling everything, right? All the communications and all that. So we're adjusting in the market, kind of getting back to your question. We're adjusting to what we do and how we do it. And as far as finding deals, my husband is tapping into kind of like getting more pocket deals from his contractors too, that are investors. So we're tapping into that.
So have you stopped the direct to seller marketing?
The wholesaling, we are taking a pause, and we're actually shifting to, soon we're going to kind of shift into the multifamily. We're creating a partnership with someone, and, we realize, you chase a person and you're going to probably close on like $15,000-$20,000 assignment. You might as well chase a person who has multifamily where you can have $100,000, $200,000 assignment. So it's more like valuing your time in a different way. So I'd say for the last year, we kind of obtain our skill set, know what to do, how to do it, and just redirecting our energy towards more of a multifamily.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about your virtual assistant business. You mentioned the course, and what do these virtual assistants do? What type of businesses are they helping? And what is your elevator pitch for that service?
Sure. So for my wholesaling business, they were all basically inside sales or lead management type of people. So cold calling. I'll pull the list. Some of them actually were on the more of an integration side. We'll tell them how to pull the different kinds of lists, like tax delinquency, code violation, water shut off. So they'll pull the list for us. They'll call. Those are normally different people. I never kind of put the admin role and mix it with the sales role because the personalities are totally different. For my Airbnb, my VA is basically managing all the communication with guests, calling cleaners, maintenance people, creating calendars for us on what not to forget, creating profiles, because for Airbnb, you don't just for short-term rentals, you don't just run it through Airbnb. There's Vrbo, there's booking.com. There are managing platforms. We're using Guesty. So he created basically everything for us. And because we have 2 units, we had to create 3 different listings because you can either rent one individually or you can rent everything together. So he created all the listings for us, set everything up. And there's like a lot that comes. I didn't realize how much goes into setting up an Airbnb. Then he set up the Price Labs. It's a pricing platform that basically works like an Uber. It's a fluctuation pricing based on demand. So all the setup and day-to-day just overall management. My VA also has access to Amazon. And I came up with it. I gave him like child Amazon type of account. So you can basically approve the purchases. So my cleaner lives locally and she gets all the deliveries for all the supplies. So whenever we're low on something, cleaner actually communicates with my VA and he just orders it. All I have to do on my phone, just text message, say why. I do approve that.
So the service you offer with your VA business, is it primarily geared towards kind of like that in-house management of Airbnbs, or is it also maybe geared towards if I wanted to start wholesale?
Anything, to be honest, it's not tied to real estate at all. My recent customer actually are 2 brothers from Chicago. They're flipping furniture. So they needed just admin VAs for their business. So I hire primarily right now from Philippines, and I provide that service. And, my kind of launch 2.0, if you want to call it this way. I want to expand to more of our own time zones, so going down to South America. And then I would like to also expand to South Africa because I really, let's just be honest, some people in America are racist. And when they hear the accent from people from Philippines, even though I hire, ideally with people that have minimal accent, but there's still a stigma. They really don't like sometimes to hear from them. But when you hear people from South Africa and they have very unique accent, it's not British. It's kind of like it, but it's not. So people are always intrigued. Who's calling them? Why do you have this accent? Where are you from? So that's partially the reason why I want to hire from South Africa. But going back to your question, what do I provide? I basically provide the sourcing itself, right? So early on, I wanted to teach people how to hire on their own. And that's what the whole course is about. Mm-hmm. Because I made some mistakes with hiring through agencies. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The agency will hire for me. They'll manage my VA. I don't even have to spend time on managing them. Reality is you lose when you don't manage your own people, you lose that control and you have to train the manager to train the VA, which that whole model that agencies provide really doesn't really work in the long run. Plus, I've been paying them maybe $10 an hour where I can hire somebody for $5 an hour, right? So they get the cut of that and VA actually gets underpaid and they leave. So, I had few, stories. One of the VAs, like they just kind of didn't qualify them properly. She ended up calling one of my sellers dumbass. I was like, oh my God. So she was gone. But by the time she was gone, the agency were very apologetic, but they said like, oh, it will take us about 3 weeks to rehire somebody else. And like, so what? My business has to stop just because, you guys don't have somebody else to replace it. So then I had to wait for somebody else. Somebody else came on board. He was amazing. But about a month in, he completely disappeared. They couldn't find him. I couldn't find him. And then they're like, well, sorry, we're going to, have to find you another VA. And I said, you know what, I'm done. So I started hiring myself. And guess what? This guy comes back to me about 3 weeks later. And he said, I'm really sorry. I was very underpaid. If you hire me on the spot right now, I'll get back and work for you for $4 an hour. I'm like, how much do they pay him if he's going to work for me for $4? And that's when the light bulb went on. I was like, why bother, going through the agency where I still have to train the manager, where I still have to lose touch with a lot of my VAs. So I hired myself. I made a couple of mistakes. I created the whole process. And I showed it to my friend and she's like, oh my gosh, you should create a course. You should charge for that. And I'm like, oh, come on, who's going to listen to that? She's like, no, I guarantee people will listen for that. So actually in GoBundance, my whole group took the course and one of my good friends, she was able to hire a bunch of VAs and expand her Airbnb management business from 20 units to more than several hundreds right now. And she's like, every day, she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know how easy it was to just follow the procedure and just hire the VAs.
How much is the course?
The course is $499. And my service is to hire because now people started coming back to me and they said, well, I'm so busy in my business. Why don't you just hire for me? And I already started working with a team in Philippines. We kind of created this trial run and it was a successful venture. So I have a team now in Philippines who basically would do everything for you, right? I'm teaching in the course how to do it because you pay it once and you just gonna kind of go and do it yourself, right? But some people really don't even have time for that, even though the course is only 1 hour. They don't want to kind of create the whole, job description or, even though you can just copy and paste everything that I kind of provide, but, some people don't have time for that. And my team would probably have for every given post between 80 to 100 candidates. They select about 25 to 30 and interview them. And then they present only 2 to 3 great candidates that are applicable. So that service is $9.99. And I've had successful people saying, yeah.
So $1,000 places one VA, one full-time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been, accidentally, I actually accidentally got into this business because, for the longest time, I just denied, the skill set that I had. And actually, a lot of my friends in GoBundance convinced me, like, I don't know why you're doing this wholesaling thing where you're clearly really good at this. Help me out. So that's why with my wholesaling, I'm a little bit on the pause until we kind of move our direction to more kind of like larger deals and concentrating on my, virtual assistant business right now.
Awesome. You mentioned earlier that you also had some long-term rentals. Tell me about those.
Yeah. What did you say? How many?
Well, how many? What do they look like? How do you determine if it's going to be a long-term rental? What is the numbers on them?
Sure. So it's kind of hard to find a good rental outside of the Philadelphia itself, right? Philadelphia is a really good market for rentals, but it's kind of like C and D, or then A and B that's very overpriced and you're not getting any cash flow, right? It's very similar to any market, but C and D in Philadelphia that is very tenant friendly is really not fun, really not fun. So we wanted to be outside of Philly, and this is where it gets tricky. Outside of Philadelphia, everything is overpriced. Cap rates are probably less than 5, if probably less than 3 at this point, right? With the market going up. So accidentally, I stumbled upon one area that's about an hour from us. And I noticed there was a condo for 50 grand, but granted, that was in 2018. So we were still in Switzerland. And I'm like, 50 grand, we can scoop them up, like buy a bunch of those. The HOA for the condo wasn't that bad, but the tax for that area was somewhat significantly higher to what I would normally, expect to have. It's very unusual neighborhood where schools are really bad, yet the school tax is pretty high. But I ran the numbers, and at that acquisition price, like, it was a no-brainer, and the property did not require any improvement. And I could rent it for $1,000 right away. So the $50,000 acquisition and $1,000 rent, which was great. But keep in mind the tax was high. So I bought this as my first trial for long term because my husband was just flipping all the time before that. We rented it out. The numbers were decent, but then I get a letter in the mail from some lawyer that says, listen, your assessment is pretty high. I can lower it down, based on the comps in the area. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I always kind of think that it's a scam at first, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to give it a try. So they explained to me how the formula works, and the assessment was really too high. So we were able to lower down the taxes, like cut them in half, which bring my cash flow even higher. And that made me sort of like realize I kind of like that area to begin with, even though it's further away from where we stationed, it's still manageable. And back then we were still in Switzerland. So last year we started looking more and more into that area. And we accidentally kind of came about 3 different properties in one neighborhood. It's a neighborhood of townhouses, and there's a very low HOA, and 3 of them came at the same time. So we found one on MLS, one came from a wholesaler, and another one came as my personal contact or something. I can't remember how, but we asked ourselves a question. Isn't it odd that, all 3 came from the same neighborhood? And at first we're kind of like scared, don't put your, all your eggs in one basket. But then I spoke with a good friend of mine, Elaine from GoBundance, and she's like, that's what we do. And she's big. They have too many single family houses. She's like, we scoop them up in one neighborhood, and then we are the comps whenever we get to sell it or when we get to rent it. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So we decided to buy all 3. They were all at different price points, but anywhere between like 90 to 110. And we did not rehab one of them, rented it right away for $1,500. The other 2, we did decide to rehab just to increase the rent. And I think we put in, depends on the property, I think anywhere between $10,000 to $25,000 because they didn't require a lot. And all of them were appraised above, like we expected 130 appraisal, but all of them were appraised above 150.
Awesome.
So, and we kept buying. So in that same HOA, now we have 6 in the same exact HOA. And I'm calling basically every person there, and I'm telling every neighbor, if you're selling, we're looking to buy. Just yesterday, we were talking with an investor who is retiring, wants to sell properties there. And it's funny because he rehabbed one to see how high the market is for the rehab property. And he's thinking about maybe selling to us the one that's as is. And we had lunch yesterday, and he's like, I listed it 200. I'll let you know how much it's going to sell for, because that creates a comp for us. And he just got multiple offers at 190. So he called me, is like, all of your properties are now 190, just letting you know.
Nice.
So yeah, we kind of like acquired on average at like $100,000 point, put in maybe, 10, 20 grand, and it's all now 190. So all of them are cashed out.
And what do they rent? What do they rent for?
The cheapest one rents for $1,700. The last one we rent was $1,850.
Oh, that's great.
We can keep raising up the rents in that area because it has good school district.
Awesome. So for the sake of time, I want to hop over to our radio round for our listeners.
Sure.
Just 3 questions to help get to know you a little bit better. So the first one is, what's your favorite book?
Well, I just pulled it up, right? I was just rereading it, and it's A Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. He now has a Genius Zone too. So I kind of like these 2 books as my latest free read. So yeah, I would highly recommend those.
A Big Leap?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll check it out. What's your favorite quote?
I'll use a quote that Gay Hendricks said in that book, because he kind of goes into a little bit of a kind of like thinking about your time and money. And he basically said, you'll never have enough money to buy things that you don't need, and you'll never have enough time to do things that you don't want to do. So it's a little bit out there, but that phrase was very profound on me because, as all of us entrepreneurs and investors always kind of running around and, never have enough time. And there's one big chapter in that book that talks about the Newtonian versus the Einstein approach into time. So highly recommend to read that part.
I will check it out. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
I like going out for walks, meditating, playing tennis with my husband, just spending time with kids, just anything with my family, to be honest, is amazing. Awesome.
So how can our listeners get in touch with you, get to know you, learn from you, invest with you, hire you for your virtual assistant business?
Sure. You can either email me at questions@outsourceyourtasks.com or just go on outsourceyourtasks.com. Check it out there. I'm happy to help. I really, really enjoy just hanging out with like-minded people. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me.
Awesome. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed our chat and getting to know you, and I look forward to keeping up with you on your journey.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.